Go to Instagram. All right, perfect. We are live. Well, thank you and welcome everyone to Soul Star Light Up. And if you're watching now or watching during the replay, I am here to welcome my guest, Hilary. Can you say your last name? I meant to ask you, and I don't like to mess up people's last names because people always mess up mine. So can you just say?
Yeah,
I want to say Rudenauer, but I don't know if that's what it is.
Yeah, so it's Rudenauer. Very close.
Rudenauer.
It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful. But yes. Yeah.
And it's funny because every time I was typing it, I'm like, in order for me to be able to spell it correctly, I'm like Rudenauer, but I wanted to say Rudenauer for some reason. So I'm glad I asked you so I wouldn't butcher it. Thank you, and welcome. And I'm just going to read a little bit about who you are and what you do. So Hilary is an Usui and Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki Master Teacher, Gendai Reiki Master, Postpartum Doula, 500-hour Kripalu Yoga Teacher, and owner of the Mindful Mama. Hilary has completed additional training and certifications in peer support, trauma-informed practices, spiritual counseling, lactation, perinatal mental health, birth support, prenatal yoga, sound healing, Ayurveda, Qigong, mindfulness, breathwork, and life force yoga for anxiety and depression. She's currently enrolled in a 3-year certification process to become a somatic experiencing practitioner. Hilary combines her lived experience as a trauma survivor with her professional expertise in the areas of mental health, maternal care, and holistic healing to create transformational experiences which people feel seen, safe, nurtured, and empowered. Hilary is a mother of 2 amazing kiddos, a wife, gardener, hiker, and dog mom. When she's not working, she can usually be found in the woods or laying on the floor with her kids piled on top of her. So that sounds amazing. And thank you. And I don't know how you have time for any of these things. Like, so awesome. So thank you so much for coming, for being a guest on my little tiny show here.
Thanks for having me.
You sound amazing, and I don't know how the heck we haven't connected,
I know, I'm really
before.
excited about this.
But this is why I do this stuff, because I love connecting with people, and then you meet such cool people. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to the point where you started your business, The Mindful Mama.
Yeah. So previous to starting my business, I worked for an organization, a nonprofit organization that was funded by the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services here in Connecticut, called the organization, or the program was called TOIBO. And so myself and 2 other individuals created a space where people with mental health experiences, substance use challenges, could come to access holistic healing in a community of like-minded individuals who had similar lived experiences, and really just be able to kind of leave labels at the door and come and experience healing. And so I spent 8 years at that organization, traveling around the state and the country, bringing things like yoga and meditation and, Qigong and breath work to inpatient psychiatric hospitals and to outpatient treatment centers, and all different kinds of conferences and events. And, bringing these modalities, Reiki as well, bringing it to people who didn't have access, or people who wouldn't be able to access it otherwise. And also to the individuals who support them, right? So the mental health professionals who also need a lot of nurturing as well. So I spent 8 years doing that, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I learned so much about myself. It was a peer community, so we all had in common the fact that we have lived experience of some kind. So I identify as a person in recovery from trauma, just a lifelong, ongoing journey of peeling back layers. And so, I learned so much there, and it was such a beautiful experience, and I grew so much as a person. And then in 2018, I got pregnant with my daughter. And it was this like really interesting kind of identity shift where I was like, oh, I love my work so much. I was the director of the program at the time, and I was like, I don't want to give up anything. I just want it all to be the same. I want to do the work. And then I had her and I was on maternity leave, and I had this like, oh my gosh, I never want to go back to work. I just want to stay here forever in my little bubble. And so I kind of continued on in this mucky place. I felt like I was swimming upstream for the next like year or so, where I was trying to kind of come to terms with all of the things, all the different parts of my identity. And then COVID hit, and it was kind of this beautiful pause where, you know, I think a lot of people ended up in a similar situation as me, where you were kind of forced to really like look and examine things. And so we were all working remotely. And I was like, you know what? I just feel like something else is calling me. And so I, I became certified as a birth doula and a postpartum doula. I don't do birth work because so I'm like, oh my God, so many kudos to my birth worker friends. Because you have to be on call and be willing to drop everything. And that was really hard for me, having my daughter being so young. So I decided to focus on postpartum work. And that just, you know, deciding that that was the move I was going to make, kind of, that was where my business was born. And so I created the Mindful Mama in 2020 at like the peak of everything. And it was just a wild, wild time to start a business, but a beautiful time as well. And so I continued to kind of have one foot in each world. And I worked, you know, at my job at Toivo, and I started my business. And then I had my son. And again, it was just kind of like a internal something. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this full time. So since then, you know, my business has grown to incorporate all of my different loves. And now my main focus really is on Reiki primarily, as that's become kind of the biggest piece. And I don't know, you know, I would love to just chat with you about this, but, you know, I started, my Reiki journey began back in, I'm trying to think, 2013, I think, is when I took my first training. And from the moment I entered into it and all the, you know, classes I took after, I said, I never want to teach. I don't know why, but I was just like dead set against it. And something shifted that for me a couple of years ago. And I don't know what it was, inspired me to be like, yes, I'm going to do this. So since stepping into that role of teacher, that part of my business just kind of blew up in a really beautiful way, in this way that I just didn't even expect. And it was kind of like the universe being like, oh, you're finally doing the thing you're supposed to do. So I still do a little bit of my postpartum work, but I primarily see Reiki clients. And then, you know, I've always had a passion for supporting individuals who are on a trauma healing journey of some kind. And so even since, you know, exiting my nonprofit world and entering into my own business, I still just seem to attract individuals who've been on a similar path as my own. So, I do, you know, I do work a lot with people who've experienced trauma. So I'm really excited about this kind of new path that I'm starting in terms of somatic experiencing, and seeing how I can, you know, just support people in new ways using that tool. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my journey.
Well, tell us more about that. I mean, that's, you know, you have all the other trainings that you've done. I mean, a lot of the Reiki, different types of Reikis. There's so many types of Reikis, which is great because that's now what you're focusing on. But you're also doing the somatic work, or starting to do that, right? So how do you see those things being incorporated in your business now?
Yeah. So I have so many thoughts about how it will all work. But I've started doing one-on-one work with people because I have other trainings in a lot of like, you know, how to work with the vagus nerve and things like that, just to optimize your nervous system and well-being. And so I've started working with people one-on-one, just sharing tools to help them really support their nervous systems. And so I think I'll kind of transition some of that one-on work to really just incorporate the tools of somatic experiencing. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's a very, it's funny because it's kind of broad in the way it can be experienced. And it's also a very specific set of kind of tools for experiencing your internal physiological sensations, and also really just allowing the body time and space to be able to release stuck energy that is associated with um, um, stress responses or protective responses that were not able to be carried out in the moment. So an example of that might be like getting into a car accident. Our natural protective response within our body might be to like throw an arm up to protect our head. And if someone doesn't get the chance to do that, they could find that there is pain or tightness or limited mobility in this area of the body. And so through something like somatic experiencing, you can kind of get quiet enough and get in touch with the body in a unique enough kind of way where then you can allow for that energy to complete and to release or to be renegotiated. And so any type of traumatic, whether it's a physical trauma, in the body, like something like that being expressed as pain, or whether it's something more mental, emotional, that's really like a beautiful container for working through some of that stuff. So, but I see it all as energy. So I'm really excited for the way that I believe that I'll be able to pair Reiki and somatic experiencing and bring in this kind of somatic touch component. And like I said, I think it's all, and I don't know how you feel, but I feel like it's all energy anyways. So it's, we might use different terms, but it's all energy. And so bringing the two together, I think that they'll support each other really wonderfully. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's different ways to work with the expression of energy in the physical, energetic, and, mind, body, all of that, because it's also related. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in the meantime, I'm doing a lot of more just like group offerings. So like workshops, just trying to share little bits and pieces for people so that they can start to bring it into their lives. Because even if you're not doing, a full somatic experiencing session where you're going deep and trying to release one specific thing, there's so many tools that are just so relevant to like all of us. Right. In terms of being able to orient to the space that you're in, or being able to find a sense of resourcing within yourself. And I mean, these are just little tidbits that I feel like are just so simple and yet so profound. So I'll be sharing a lot of workshops coming up around like kind of different lenses, looking at some of this information through different lenses.
Good. Yeah. And we'll talk about that one in a little bit, as far as like, how people can find you, where they can find your workshops and all that. Awesome. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about your business. So when you first started the Mindful Mama, how did that look? And what is it looking now? Because you said you were doing the things, but now you're focusing more on Reiki. So how did you start the business, and what is it evolving to? Because that's how business works, and that's how it needs to work, is that evolution and allowing yourself to like really focus on the thing that is calling you the most. So tell people about how you got there.
The thing that lights you up, right?
That's right.
So yes, absolutely. It is. My business looks so different now. When I started, my focus really was on postpartum doula work, and I was always doing Reiki. I always had a space where I was doing that. But I spent the majority of my time, majority of my work week, doing postpartum doula support, which I didn't even know what that was when I became a mom. I found out after. I wish I knew before. But so what that is, for anybody that doesn't know, is it is a I would go in and I would provide support to new families or families who are adding a child to the family. And I would help with everything from the day-to-day tasks, like, changing diapers or getting the mail, to things like, holding the baby so that mom could get a nap, or providing education around newborn care, or perinatal mental health, things like that. So it was really providing practical, informational and emotional support. Mm-hmm. And so I would go into homes, and I would be with families for anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months. And so for the first probably 2 years of my business, that was like my primary focus. And I had, I would teach yoga and some of these other little things on the side. And I had my Reiki practice, but that was really my focus. And then, at a certain point, I just kind of started to say to myself, like, I really, Reiki's really been a constant for me. Even at my old job, it was always something that I was doing. And I was like, I really just would love for this to not be a small part of what I do anymore. It's always been there, but I would like to do more of it. And so I started, my kind of private practice in that, just of Reiki, started to expand. And then, like I said, I started to teach. And so that became another part where I was traveling around teaching different places. And yeah, so I still really am passionate about supporting families. And, especially as like a mom of young kids myself, I'm just always like, anytime that a mom comes in to see me for a Reiki session or something, I'm like, I know where you are. I understand it so well. And I think there's just this like really unique support that is needed for families. And so I love the opportunity to support them. And I'm still finding ways to do that, which feels really good.
Good, good.
Yeah.
So how often do you offer Reiki as a course, right? And what levels do you offer? And also what other workshops? You mentioned some workshops that you're offering. So let's talk about a little bit about what your offerings are.
Sure. So I have, I teach a Reiki level 1, a Reiki 2, a Reiki 3, or a Reiki master practitioner. And then I teach 2 different Reiki master teacher classes. So I teach a Holy Fire, and then I teach a more of like a classic Usui. And so I give folks the option, kind of like to pick their track, if you will. And so I've done a lot of different trainings, and ever since I started teaching, I feel like Reiki has sucked me down this really beautiful rabbit hole of feeling like I just never, anytime I think I have something figured out, I don't have it figured out. And it's really beautiful, and it's been a super transformative experience for me. And so my classes, I try to focus on giving a really kind of comprehensive view of what Western Reiki looks like, what Reiki looks like, having gone through all of its different iterations here in the US, for example. And then like, what did a more classic approach to Reiki look like? And then, how can students feel empowered to work with it in the way that feels right to them?
Yeah.
And so I teach classes at my space. So currently my office is located in Ellington. So I teach classes there. And then I also travel around. I teach classes at yoga studios, and I teach courses for mental health professionals at the Connecticut Women's Consortium. So yeah, I'm fortunate to have lots of opportunities to teach. And so I have a class coming up for mental health professionals actually this Thursday. And I'm really excited to be offering a Karuna, Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki Master Teacher class this July. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm thinking that's going to be a good one. And yeah, in terms of workshops, I do a little bit of everything, just kind of based, and this is the way I've always done it. And I think that's what makes it fun, is I like to just offer workshops based on whatever it is that like is inspiring me at the time. So, in the past, I've done everything from like workshops on forgiveness to workshops on, mantra meditations, and, to like do yoga with Pink Floyd in the background kind of workshops. So, so right now I have, more of a focus kind of on the somatic experiencing piece. So I have a yoga for the nervous system workshop that's coming up that is going to just take kind of the regular yoga class container, but incorporate lots of somatic tools into it. So just bringing some of those tools to people through a different avenue, right? So folks within the yoga community can access that. And I think it's really interesting because most people are like, well, isn't yoga for the nervous system anyways? Like as it is, which it is, but it's also, there's layers to it. So being
Yeah.
able to provide some of that education. And then I have a embodied healing workshop that's coming up. That's also, it's going to be, more of those somatic tools and just really teaching tools for presence so that we can, presence being the baseline kind of foundation for emotional regulation and joy and pleasure and embodiment and all the things. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And where can people find the information for these workshops?
So I have it all listed on my website, which is mindfulmamact.com.
Okay.
And one little other one that I'll plug is that I'm doing a retreat for moms, specifically for moms. And it's just going to be a totally nourishing, nurturing day of like community and relaxation and some education in there too. And that's going to be the day before Mother's Day. So that's up on there too.
Nice. That's perfect. That's beautiful. So kind of backing up a little bit, because I don't think I asked you this question specifically, but I know you mentioned having your own trauma background and then working at Toivo. How did you find your way to the energetic healing space? Like, how did you, most people, right, they go to trauma, they have trauma, they go to therapy, or they don't, and they just kind of self-medicate or whatever way they decide to deal with their trauma. A lot of people don't necessarily find their way to energy healing very easily, or not with a lot of stumbling through things, so
yeah,
how did
well, I
you
certainly
find
did some stumbling.
Oh yeah, we all do some stumbling, before, because we're resisting, right? We resist the journey. Our whatever, the universe guides us to where we need to go, but we're like, nope, that's not for me. Nope.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely think that yoga was like the gateway drug for me, as it is for many, in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
So I found, I struggled starting around the age of like 13, and I really didn't even know what it was. I experienced childhood sexual trauma, and I had so much of it that I was just completely unaware of and had blocked out. So I didn't even really know why I was such a miserable person that hated the world. And so my parents, I'm very fortunate that I had parents who were, willing to try to do really anything and everything to try to support me in living a better life. And so they did the first thing that they introduced me to was like talk therapy and then medication and those sorts of things. But I was lucky enough that, at 13, my dad also took me to a yoga class. So it was by no means like love at first yoga pose. Like I was miserable, and I think I went running out of multiple classes. But for whatever reason, I think I just appreciated that it was something different. And so for whatever reason, I would kind of touch back into it, periodically over the course of, it was like a decade of really being really kind of lost and fumbling through life. And so I would kind of, touch back into it. And when I finally, started to be a person who wanted to actively engage with my life, I found a yoga community, and I worked, at the front desk in exchange for classes, and I made my practice a bigger part of my life and found it to be so supportive. And through that, it just kind of introduced me to all of these other things. So, I was introduced to sound healing, and I was introduced to meditation, and I was introduced to shamanic practices, and I was introduced to energy work. And I was also fortunate that I had a person in my life at the time who was a teacher, and she was, a person close to me. So she was the first person to give me a Reiki session. And then she became my first teacher. And so I think the stars aligned to make that happen, where I just, it was something that was kind of right there in front of me when I was ready to receive it. So, and it's so amazing to me because it's definitely become, I think about back then, and like, it was a very beneficial tool, but man, I didn't even utilize it like to the full extent that I could. Now as a mom who's like constantly stressed out and like, really just feeling often a sense of being like depleted, or, moms were so busy caring for
Mm-hmm.
others, right? Like, we can
Yep.
find ourselves not feeling cared for. So, I mean, now I use Reiki like it's my lifeline. Now I'm like, I do it on myself every day, but I'm also super consistent about going and getting it done,
Yeah.
so that I have that space where I can hand it all over and I can be taken care of. And when I first found Reiki, when I was first really in it, I mean, it was more so like I experienced it once and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I want to learn more about it. But I didn't use it in the ways that I could have. So it's always just kind of funny to look back. But clearly it was, that became the next touchstone for me, where it was just like, I would go back and I would go back. And yeah, now I just have this completely different relationship to it. And it's really, I couldn't imagine my life without it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's gotten you to where you are,
Yeah,
and giving you all the experience and the learning tools. Like, I mean, who, like, not many people land like a job in doing these types of things, right? Like Toivo, I mean, it was a very unique space, very unique nonprofit, or is a very
absolutely.
unique nonprofit space.
Yeah,
So yeah, to be able to also work, and I know obviously it's a job in a system that's not the most modern or best for who we are as human beings now. So it does, even though you're doing what you love, it's still, the politics and the bureaucracy and all the stuff still gets in the way of.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because as things get bigger and better, then more people are interested and more people want to, and that's just kind of the way it works.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
hard to keep sacred spaces sacred when it gets, too
A
popular, too
hundred
fancy,
percent.
whatever.
Yeah, but man, I mean, like when I was there, it was just that was such a amazing part of my journey, being able to continuously be exposed to new practices, and really, I always say, like, such a profound thing happened there, where I realized that there was people who thought that there was value to my story. And that was
Hmm.
the first time I'd ever come across that. And that was
Right.
just totally transformational to me. So
Yeah.
then being able to go out and kind of spread that message to others, and yeah, mind blowing.
Right. And seeing the impact that it has on people, like, people who have never shared their story, or people who are, contemplating about sharing their story, or who have shared their story many, many times, being an inspiration to someone and telling what you've gone through and how you've gotten through it is just, it's like no other. You can have all the trainings in the world, but that personal touch with your story is always, such a thing for people
Absolutely.
to feel connected, and trust that these things actually do work.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think that was, yeah, you just said it
Mhm.
beautifully.
Good. So tell us your website one more time, so
Yeah.
that people know it and have it. And I'm gonna try to, while you do that, I'm gonna try to type it in here.
Okay. So it's Mindful Mama, which is spelled MAMACT, as in Connecticut.com. And on social, you can find me at Mindful Mama Reiki. So I'm Instagram and Facebook and
Okay.
YouTube are all Mindful Mama Reiki.
All right. So there. All right.
Thank
So
you.
all right. So we are getting to the end of our time. So I wanted to just ask the 3 questions that I usually ask everyone I have come on this little segment that I do. So first question is, tell me what lights you up.
Well, I feel like this is going to sound so redundant after this conversation, but Reiki really lights me up. But not just the practice itself. One of the things that I love the most is teaching and being able to watch other people connect to what feels like magic for the first time. That absolutely lights me up every single time and never gets old. And the other piece is the community. Like, I absolutely love connecting with other people who love working with this energy as much as I do. Um, I've had the chance over the last year or so to connect and be in spaces with people from all over the world who all love this as much as we do. And there's something so profound about the way that this really brings people together. And like, we can be so totally different and not even speak the same language. And yet like, we're all connecting here to the same thing and having these, similar experiences. And so, being part of that larger whole, this kind of web that, Reiki weaves, definitely lights me up.
Yeah. Beautiful. And the next question is, what advice do you have for your younger self? Maybe that, angry 13-year-old that didn't really understand why she was so angry.
Yeah. Oh man, I have so many pieces of advice that I wish that I could give her. I think that probably, one of the biggest things that I wish that I could say would be to, would just be to know that it wasn't, her fault. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so many other things that it's hard to even, pick one. But I think just given that she had no context, no idea anything that was going on, just that it wasn't her fault, and to not turn it all inward.
That's right. Good.
Yeah.
And then the last one, similar to this one, is what advice do you have for the younger generation right now?
Ooh. My advice for the younger generation is to throw their phones in the garbage and go outside with their shoes off.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Yes, yes, yes. 100 million times yes.
I hate to be so like extreme about it, but yeah, I mean, I have a hard time with even my own kids. I have a 5-year-old and an almost 3-year-old, and it's really hard to just see the way that, and they're not even exposed to screens as much as some other kids, but just to see how much of a profound impact the screens have on them, and to see that this is becoming, it's just such a just a very intensely different world that my kids are growing up in, even than I was, never mind like, my parents and generations before. It's intensely different. And it's so beautiful to see just how like wonderful my kids feel when we're just like waltzing through the woods and jumping from rock to rock, and just to be able to witness those two differences. So that would be my advice to them and to like the whole world, really.
Yes, everyone, not just the younger generation,
all generations. All of us.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly
absolutely.
that. My God, thank you so much, Hilary. I appreciate our time together.
Thank you.
So everyone, look Hilary up. Look for her classes and her services. Her energy is amazing, and I love the work that you're doing in the world. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you and the work you're doing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.